These are some of the most recognisable cliffs on the planet, and every year millions of people come to view their beauty. But hidden within them is a story. It's a story of change and a story of time. So come with me to answer the question, why are the cliffs of Dover so famous? Today, the White Cliffs of Dover stand as one of Britain's most iconic landscapes, rising to more than 100 metres above the English Channel. They've become a symbol of home, resilience, and the gateway between Britain and continental Europe. But despite their dramatic appearance, these cliffs began life in one of the calmest environments imaginable. Around 90 million years ago, during the late Cretaceous period, southern Britain lay beneath a warm, shallow tropical sea. The climate was far warmer than today, sea levels were much higher, and dinosaurs still walked the land. If you've already watched my film at Ketton Quarry, you'll know this isn't the first time we've travelled back to England's tropical past. The limestone at Ketton formed in warm shallow seas filled with corals, shellfish and other large marine life. But here at Dover conditions were different. The water was deeper, quieter and further from the coast, allowing only the finest sediments and microscopic organisms to settle onto the seabed. Floating within these ancient waters were billions of microscopic algae called coccolithophores. Each one was surrounded by an incredibly small shell made from calcium carbonate. When these organisms died, the tiny shells slowly drifted through the water and settled onto the seabed below. It sounds insignificant, but this process continued every single day for millions of years. Layer upon layer accumulated until hundreds of meters of soft white sediment covered the ocean floor. As more sediment buried these layers, pressure gradually squeezed out the water and compressed them into rock we know today as chalk. And every fragment of chalk contains millions and millions of these ancient microorganisms called coccolithophores. And it's incredible to think that something so small can create something so large. There are, however, some anomalies present within these cliffs. As you can see, dark bands run through the chalk cliffs here, and these aren't chalk. These are instead flint. And these were formed when ancient marine organisms released silica after they died, and this concentrated in the rock after it had formed, leaving behind these black stripes in the cliffs and also the dark black nodules that you can see in the cliffs themselves. When you first see them, the cliffs of Dover look like they've stood here since the dawn of time. They tower over the English Channel, and they're the first things that you see when you enter this country by boat. But don't let their prowess fool you. This landscape is constantly changing. While chalk may seem like a very resistant rock, it actually isn't. In the grand scheme of rocks, it's actually incredibly soft and weak. And the evidence for that is here, at the base of the cliff. And we can see underneath this area, there are small indents. And this is formed by two processes, hydraulic action and abrasion. Hydraulic action, when the tides are high and the storm waves come rolling in, they compress air into the cracks in the rock, and over time that can cause small chunks to break away. Abrasion, when stones such as these are hurled at the cliff, and every time that happens, a scrape forms and parts of the cliff are knocked away. Over time, after that erosion continues, a wave-cut notch can start to form at the base of the cliff. And this destabilizes everything above, and eventually, if that wave-cut notch becomes too deep, the entire cliff can collapse. As erosion continues, the cliff line recedes further inland, collapse after collapse. However, that's not the end of the story, because there's an area underneath that is left untouched, and we refer to that as the wave-cut platform, and that's visible behind me here. Only visible at the lowest of tides, this marks the position of the previous cliff line. These cliffs are retreating centimetre by centimetre, year after year. It may be too slow to notice in a single visit, but over decades and centuries the coastline continues to move inland. But something else also caught my attention. Just a few kilometres away, the cliffs suddenly begin to look very different. Here at Samphire Hoe, the cliffs look completely different to what we saw at St Margaret's Bay. They're less steep, they're covered in vegetation, and they look more stable. So despite the fact that it's only a few kilometres away, what's changed? It's not the geology, it's the impact of humans. The cliffs here are still made from the same chalk that stretches along the Kent coastline, but the landscape has developed in a very different way. Over thousands of years, weathering and erosion have broken small pieces of chalk away from the cliff face, but rather than being removed immediately by the sea, much of this material has accumulated on the lower slopes. As soil gradually developed, grasses and wildflowers began to colonise the loose chalk, creating the softer green appearance that we see today. Vegetation also helps to bind the surface together, reducing small-scale erosion and giving these slopes a much gentler profile than the almost vertical cliffs further north. The biggest reason this landscape looks so different is that, unlike much of the natural coastline we've been exploring, much of the land beneath my feet didn't exist before the 1990s. Samphire Hoe was created during the construction of the Channel Tunnel. Millions of tons of chalk and marl were excavated beneath the English Channel as engineers dug the tunnel linking Britain and France. Rather than disposing of that material elsewhere, it was used to reclaim land from the sea, creating this entirely new nature reserve at the foot of the cliffs. And nature has wasted no time in making it home. The thin chalk soils support a rich grassland where colourful wildflowers bloom throughout the spring and summer, attracting bees, butterflies and a wide variety of other insects. Above the cliffs, seabirds such as fulmars and herring gulls ride the updrafts, while kestrels and peregrine falcons can often be seen hunting overhead. On the ground, grazing cattle and goats help to manage the grassland, preventing scrub from taking over and allowing these delicate wildflowers to continue thriving. And the wildlife doesn't stop at the shoreline. Around the rocky pools left behind by the tide, it's often possible to spot crabs, sea snails, small fish and other marine life, all taking advantage of the sheltered waters beneath the cliffs. Together, these habitats make Samphire Hoe far more than an engineering project. It's a reminder that given time, even a man-made landscape can become a thriving home for wildlife. Due to the nature of these cliffs, both vegetated and unvegetated, they make the perfect home for birds and insects, making this region home to some of the most beautiful coastal wildlife in the whole of England. However, it's not just nature that's had an opportunity as a result of these cliffs, it's also the people, because these cliffs have shaped Britain's relationship with the rest of Europe for hundreds of years. Because these cliffs don't just tell a story of an ancient ocean, they've also helped to shape the history of Britain itself. Because just beyond the cliffs lies one of the busiest stretches of water in the world. At its narrowest point, the English Channel is just over 30 kilometres wide, and on a clear day, it's even possible to see the coastline of France. That short distance has made Dover Britain's gateway to continental Europe for thousands of years. The Romans landed nearby almost 2,000 years ago, medieval kings strengthened the town's defences, and during the Second World War, these cliffs became a symbol of hope for a nation at war. Today, Dover remains one of the country's most important transport hubs. It's easy to admire these cliffs, but look just beyond them. Every ferry, every passenger, every lorry that passes through this area is part of a wider network connecting Britain with the rest of Europe. Each year, millions of passengers travel through Dover alongside millions of tons of freight. Everything from fresh food and medicines to cars and construction materials passes through this port. Its location isn't a coincidence. The same geography that created these spectacular cliffs also created Britain's shortest sea crossing to mainland Europe. It's a reminder that geography doesn't just shape landscapes, it shapes economies, trade routes, and even history. Over the course of this journey, we've travelled back to a tropical sea filled with microscopic life. We've seen the waves transform the shape of this coastline, and we've discovered the birds that now call these cliffs home. And we've also learnt how this spot has become one of the biggest gateways in all of Britain. And that's all from one stretch of coastline. The White Cliffs of Dover are often remembered for their beauty, but beneath that beauty lies a story spanning almost 90 million years. A story of ancient oceans, of relentless coastal erosion, of wildlife finding opportunity in challenging environments, and of people whose lives have been shaped by geography. Every layer of chalk, every crashing wave, and every ship entering the harbour reminds us that landscapes are never just scenery. They're the result of countless processes working together across time. The next time you're by these cliffs, don't just admire the view. Read the landscape, because every place has got a story to tell if you know where to look.